This is my opening sequence evaluation by myself, Aaron Mallory. Our film is called Blood Farmers. To create a horror film, we looked at the codes and conventions that made up a horror film. By doing this, we learnt a great deal of what is actually in that makes a horror film. We also looked at other horror film openings. An example of this is The Shining, which is posted on our group blog at the moment. This opening scene uses creepy music to effectively strike fear into the audience straight away. If we were going to go with the theme of horror, we would need a victim and a killer, as these were usually the key aspects of a horror film. Our location choice I felt was quite appropriate as the forest we used was isolated, thick and dense. This created a feel of suffocation and being trapped. The lighting of the forest was, however, not like the normal horror aspects. We filmed during the day, and although the forest was dim due to the thickness of its canopy, it was not as dark as your average horror film. However, we made up for this with excellent music choice and costumes to keep the fear in the audience. As I was playing the part of the killer, I managed to gather a costume consisting of a boiler suit, white mask, fake blood, and a weapon. I felt this costume fitted the horror genre as the mask and boiler suit meant that the killer was unknown and anonymous. The weapon I chose was not a knife that your average killer would use. It was in fact a thin long strip of metal with a small end duct tape for a handle. I then covered the weapon in fake blood and smeared it, making it look old and crusty, as if this weapon had been used many times before, creating a feeling that this man is definitely about to kill his victim, and also that he'd use anything he could find. The same thing was done to the mask, which was bloodied up and smeared with a bloody handprint, as if its last victim had struggled to survive. The purpose of the opening sequence of the film is to give a small insight into what the film will contain. However, we do not give too much away, which is why the killer is not seen too much. The film opening we used followed the media stereotype of an innocent young girl being the victim of a gruesome unknown killer. We went with this stereotype as the young girl is alone and defenseless, creating a sympathy for the victim. If our victim was that of a large man capable of defending himself, the film might not have turned out to be a horror and instead an action film or a thriller rather than a horror, as if a fight issued out, the helplessness factor would be ruined. Throughout the opening, the audience can tell this girl is walking into trouble by the editing used and the creepy music that goes along with it. Because we can tell the young girl is about to walk into a trap, and she is clearly clueless, the audience feels scared for the girl and sympathises for her. Upon editing our opening, Sam had an idea to choose Universal Pictures, as he knew from personal experience that they produce big box office movies and have a history of making horror films from the early 1900s. Two recent examples of horror movies made by Universal are Stay Alive and Dead Silence. Universal is a good choice of distributors as they have released successful horror movies. We also considered Lionsgate, who are a large and well-known film distributor who have released films such as the Saw series, which were very successful. For our opening film, the audience we aimed for were age 18 and over due to the gore that the film is likely to contain. Given the evidence from the opening scene, if anyone younger were to see the film, we fear they may be put off by the gruesome content. I feel this film would appeal to all people who have a history of watching horror films and enjoy that genre, as I feel we have used horror techniques that they will recognise and enjoy. To attract our audience in our opening sequence, we have used fear, suspense, and tension. By using these techniques, the audience is actually feeling excitement as they are waiting for something to happen. They are waiting for this girl to be confronted by the killer. The music and sounds chosen were also going to attract our audience. They can tell from the music that they are about to get into something gory because of the creepy tones of the guitar. Sounds are also used to strike fear into the audience, such as heavy breathing from the killer, footsteps, crunching on leaves, and loud unexpected sounds as the killer quickly steps into view of the screen. I've learned from using the technology of this process that there are many disadvantages to advantages in constructing this product. An example of these disadvantages was the background noises the standard video camera picks up when filming. We did not realise until we started editing that cars, wind and other things like this are picked up and make it hard for any dialogue to be heard. If we were going to overcome this problem, we would have to use a boom microphone to get a clearer sound during dialogue. When editing, we found it was quite difficult to sync cuts from different angles together. For example, when the girl's head is turning from one direction to the other using 2 different camera angles, we found it took a lot of time to get the cuts precise, so that it would be one swift movement from one way to the other using 2 angles. The preliminary task helped us greatly to practice our skills, not just with the camera but also with Final Cut Express. It also taught us a great variety of camera shots, so that when it came to filming an opening sequence, we already had a great knowledge of which camera shots would be good and exciting for our opening sequence. When using the camera, we found it was quite difficult at first to film with the tripod without making the movement shaky and not smooth. Because we had discovered this before filming an opening sequence, this gave us time to practice making our shots for our opening sequence smooth and professional. Also, as everyone had a go playing different roles in the preliminary task, we found that each of us were better suited to a certain role, such as cameraman, director or editor. It also gave us a chance to practice on Final Cut Express, so at the time we got to editing our opening sequence, we already had a good knowledge on how to use Final Cut.